My name's Frank, and in this interview, we spoke with Andres of Mudlab Pottery. He's an actor who created a ceramic studio as a side project during the pandemic when everyone was locked down. Yeah, he's a really interesting guy, and his studio is doing very well to this day. A quick note before we continue. This is the free and abridged version. If you'd like the full meal deal, head on over to patreon.com/nerdpreneur or click on the link in the description below. There you'll also get all of our other interviews in their entirety, as well as all of our Talking Nerdies. So Andres has started a few other businesses in the past, but a ceramics studio is on a whole other level. In this interview, we talked with him about how he scoped out the market to figure out where he wanted to open and any competition he needed to be aware of. He talks about his tips for anyone who wants to open their own brick and mortar location, several hiring suggestions and tips. In his case, it has a lot to do with instructors. And then also how to create a great community and give your customers a great experience when they're in your store. And we talked about a whole lot more. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview with Andres of Mudlab Pottery.
Welcome to Nerdpreneur, where we have fun conversations with people making money from their nerdy passion. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Frank.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest. His name is Andres. Welcome to the show.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you here. Well, Andres, what is your nerdy passion?
Hold on. If you're gonna start with Andres, you gotta keep it all the way through. You can't just say Andres now. I mean, you committed. So
all right.
You're going all the way.
We totally had this discussion off mic, and I'm fucking it up right now, eh? So,
nah, you're fine,
Andres. All right.
You're good.
You wouldn't believe it, but I'm actually part Chilean, and I'm terrible at the accent. And so I'll never live this down if my parents hear this. So,
good, man.
Well, Andres, what is your nerdy passion? Am I butchering it?
No, man. Look,
man, you're nailing it.
I'm not Spanish. So it's a Spanish name. I was named after an Ecuadorian tennis player named Andres Gomez, and so that's where that comes from. But
it's got to be a bit in your life, man. Like when you meet people, you just are like, you walk into the casting room and you're like, yeah, Andres, it's nice to meet you, and they're like, oh, that's
sometimes
different.
It depends on the room. You got to read the room.
Yeah, right.
I used to live with two Mexican guys, and they used to just make fun of me because you can't even say your own name, buddy. Two really good guys, but they're funny. Super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me. I would say right now, my nerdy passion currently would be the pottery studio that I opened a couple of years ago. It's called Mudlab here in Vancouver. That's what I've been probably dedicating the majority of my time and focus to in the entrepreneurial world. I do have a lot of other things that I do on the side and that I have done, but that's definitely been the biggest aspect of entrepreneurship and focus in the last 3 years. Yeah.
That's very
cool. I kind of want to give some context a bit, like right off the bat, for how Andres is in this interview, because Andres and I met about like 8-9 years ago or something when I was acting, and you're still acting, right?
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're gonna circle back.
That's my job. That's my job.
That's the main job.
Yeah, I call that's my career, and my studio is my passion project, basically.
Which is mind-blowing and one of the coolest things to me. And when you told me, I probably had the same reaction I'm having right now, which was like, you opened a studio as a side hustle in Vancouver, one of the most expensive places to own a brick and mortar business, and it's your side hustle. Oh wait! But no, your main job is you're an actor. Like, what?
You know what I always say, that people, during COVID, they bake bread or they took up crafts or whatever. My COVID hobby was opening up this pottery studio. And,
that's a crazy thing to do.
Sometimes
COVID.
I wish I just went after the sourdough, to be honest with you, but I'm here now. So no, just kidding.
When did you open?
So officially opened July 2021. I took the lease in March of 2021, and then did a bunch of renos in the place. The reason why I'm able to kind of to do what I'm doing in Vancouver, as you said, is expensive, is because I took a space that needed a lot of work, and was sort of more of like a warehousey kind of space. That was pretty run down, a lot of damage to the drywalls and floors and walls hanging off, wherever. And just really dedicated a lot of time to doing the renos, mostly myself and a couple of good friends of mine. And so March 2021 was when I signed the lease. And then in July 4th or 5th or something, we had our first class. And I remember right up until the class started, I was like chopping wood, trying to like build tables and all this kind of stuff. Like literally, as people came, I had my shirt off because I didn't have a change of clothes. I didn't want to sweat and stink, and I sawdust over me. And somebody opens the door, and I'm like, oh shit, I better get rid. And I, put my shirt on and my apron. Hey, welcome to Mudlab. Put your coats over here. And like, oh my gosh, there's no idea what I was doing. And that was the first class, and it's come a long way in a few short years, coming up on 3 years now. So,
well, I don't know a ton about ceramics, but I know ceramics is not easy. And so, did you have training before opening, and like, how did that all get started for you? Like, was this a passion from when you were a kid, or where did you train?
Yeah, so I actually I had no formal training or education in ceramics in any capacity kind of before opening the studio. And that's kind of how I approach most of the things that I do in my life. But pretty much I had taken a sculpture class in UVic as like an extra credit to get myself into the business program there, because I didn't have the GPA to get in. I had a lot of great extracurricular stuff that was like keeping me afloat in terms of my application there, and then I needed the GPA, so I took a couple of art classes. I took an acting class, and I took a two sculpture workshop classes. And that was the first time that I ever really worked with clay. And this was 2013, I think, 2012, 2013, in the summertime. And I just really loved working with clay, because prior to that, I was doing woodworking, construction, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of different, working with my hands and things like that, but nothing with clay. And so that just really sparked this fascination with the medium. And it was a pretty basic class, but I did really, really well in it, just because I'm creative and hardworking. And I would go to the studio every night almost, like 3-4 times a week. I'd be there till 1 a.m. just playing with clay. And so that really sparked an interest in it. I don't think I was like particularly good at it. I wasn't doing any wheel throwing, just sculpture, but I was fascinated. So, and just like with anything, when you're nerdy about it or hyper focused, you figure it out, right? And so that's what I did, and that just stuck with me. And 4 years later, I was playing poker with a buddy of mine, and his wife came home, and she had just finished a ceramics class at a local rec center in North Van, actually. And I said, "What, you're doing a pottery class?" Like, "Oh, no way, I used to do ceramics. Like, show me what you got." And we started talking about clay, and she's like, "You know, like what you're talking about a bit." And so she inspired me to get back into it, and actually sent an email to the instructor to help me get into a class there, because classes are all hard to get into in town. And that was it. And that was 2018, 2019, that I actually started like doing ceramics in terms of like wheel throwing and getting my hands on more, equipment and not just sculpture work. So that's what sparked it. And then I was just addicted. I was hooked. And I couldn't stop. I was going as much as I could. I was sneaking in after hours as a rec center, and like you can go in there at certain times in the evening, and then they close, and you're supposed to leave. But I would just turn the lights off, and then when the janitor would come by and do his rounds, I'd like pop back out, and I'd be there till 2 a.m. sometimes. And and just loved it, and that's kind of how it started. And then I was in a few different studios, one in LA and one here in Vancouver, and then not even a year later, I said I'm gonna open up this studio. So
why?
That's awesome.
Why the studio? I mean, I understand that you really enjoy doing ceramics, but why make that big of a leap?
I guess the question was always why not, for me, and I couldn't come up with a good enough answer. Why not? I've always wanted to have a studio workshop kind of space, whether that was going to be woodworking or ceramics or whatever. Like that was in my future. And actually, this was supposed to be a coffee shop pottery studio combo, which is something I'm still kind of working on. But that was something that I wanted to do. And so I was working at another studio here in town, and it wasn't a good fit for me. I didn't think that the community in Vancouver was being serviced in terms of like just offerings from a studio and type of um, atmosphere, community, equipment, just access to different kinds of hours. Just so many things were not happening in Vancouver, and there were studios in LA that were doing things way better. And I said, you know what? I'm going to bring kind of some of the concepts that I've seen and combine and come up with my own sort of thing. And it just made sense. And COVID happened, right? And everything was shut down and places were renting out for a little cheaper. And it was just like a perfect kind of, perfect storm of things. And I met somebody named Vin Aurora, who was an instructor at the previous studio and one of the best potters in town, and just really inspirational guy and really inspirational potter. And I said, hey man, like this is something I've been wanted to do. Like, what do you think? Let's go do this thing. And he ended up not partnering with me directly, but being really like a grounding force in being able to open the studio up from a technical aspect and just teaching me a lot about the craft. And so a lot of my early learnings and continued learnings came from opening this business and learning from Vin and learning on the job and figuring it out and messing it up and overfiring kilns and messing up glazes and da-da-da-da-da and teaching shitty classes, just all this stuff. And somehow still, making it work and not going under. And now I genuinely believe, I think we're one of the best, if not the best studios in town.
So then when you got this idea, obviously it was an idea at first and you had to kind of say, okay, well, what's the next step beyond the idea to actually get this thing? Was it go right to finding a space and then working it out? Or do you have to source a bunch of stuff in order to be able to put in the space first?
Or research competition?
Yeah, I mean, I knew what the market was. That's kind of the first thing you do, in my opinion, is you say, okay, like what's out there, who's my competition, and what is being offered, and can I do this better? Because no matter what you do, unless you're in a perfect market, you're gonna always pretty much have some level of competition, and you gotta know what you're going into, and if you can't adequately bring something unique, don't you're not ready. And I knew that in terms of the market, I knew that there was a hole and a gap, and things have changed now, but at the time there was maybe 2 or 3 like decent studios, and now there's probably 7 or 8. Not, I wouldn't say they're all decent, but it was just I knew there was space. And then, it just comes down to crunching numbers. You think, okay, well, how much is this studio charging for this? How many people how many classes? Like, how are they much they're pulling in a month and a year and what are my expenses? How much does a place cost? How much can I get it for? And you just start trying to line stuff up. And I have a few ways that I kind of approach my finances and things like that. And then, just getting on the phone, calling real estate agents. I didn't have an agent or anything like that. I never had rented a commercial space. I know what the hell I was getting into. Just started going and looking at places, and again, same thing, like learning on the job, figuring out what kind of questions to ask, what kind of, power I need, what kind of parking, just all these things you don't think about when you're getting into that realm of a business. And I had a lot of setbacks in the place that I ended up renting, and I had a lot of learning experiences, and this is kind of the theme of this whole thing, right? But it was just step by step. What's next? What do I got to do? Okay, I got to get wheels. Where am I going to get them from? What's the best place to get them from? Okay, I'm going to source them from here. I'm going to order things from the States, or I'm going to find things locally, or I'm going to get stuff used. I'm going to refurbish. How do I get a kiln? And it was just plug and play every single thing. And that's part of the reason why I think, taking the lease in March and opening in July, not only was the the renos took time, primarily because I was kind of plugging at it, a little bit at a time on my own, and with a couple of friends, that my electrician, my really good buddy Amos, and my buddy Max helped me with the demo and kind of putting up some drywall and stuff like that. But it was really just every day and night in there. So it was slow, but also like having our wheels held up and shipping, and having a kiln I had to go pick up from the island. It's like all these things. And so, I would never recommend somebody necessarily, sorry, I'm just rambling, but I guess that's the point of the podcast. I would never necessarily recommend ramble away. I would never necessarily recommend somebody just going head first into something like this, especially when you're getting into, a commercial space, because you're signing a 5+ year lease, right? And you're on the hook for that, and you're spending thousands of dollars on equipment or whatever. But I think the point of the story is that if you have a goal and you're realistic with that goal, you're not just blindly going into some idea that you think is great, but the reality is it's maybe not, and maybe not that it's a bad idea, but maybe it's not profitable. And I figure that it would be. Sorry, Frank, you want to say something there?
Yeah, well, no, you can finish, please.
No, I was just going to say that that was the reason why I said, okay, I can do this, because I have a worst case scenario, and it's basically break even or a couple of grand out. It's not that big of a deal. So worst case scenario, I learned a lot, and that's why I did it.
Right. Recognizing that learning is, worst case scenario, at least you'll take away some really good lessons. And one of the things that's really standing out to me in this story is how much prep there was, but it wasn't really considered prep at the time, I'm sure, because you were getting to know the industry just by being a part of it, because you were naturally really interested in ceramics. I mean, I'd say, given that you're sneaking into the studio and staying until 2 a.m., you're probably pretty passionate about the art. And when you have that kind of hunger for knowledge and, the joy that you get from it, you kept doing it for years. And through all of that, you met the people and you got to know it. It's sometimes a section of starting a business that gets overlooked. People are just like, I'm excited. I'm going to turn this into a business tomorrow. And I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make a name. I'm going to get the website, and I'm going to just start doing this. And there's not always as much time or research put into it. So I wanted to highlight how important that has been for you. And you've been in business now you're coming up on 3 years pretty soon.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
Yep,
Way to
years.
go, man.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. It's been a journey for sure. A lot of learning, a lot of maturing, and I was just having a conversation with Vin the other day. I just sent him a message, and just had to kind of say, thanks for all the patience and the grace that you've given me during this process. Cause I come in pretty hot a lot of the times with, how I think things should be, or my ideas, or I want things done now, and let's go. And you got to have that energy in order to get stuff done. There's no doubt about it. You're not going to move, right? And that's tough sometimes in the art world, because a lot of times artists are the opposite, right? It's like, yeah, man, I'll get to it. Don't worry. And a month later, it's like, it's on my desk. I gotta whatever. So, working in that world is kind of counterintuitive in this kind of industry sometimes. And I think, like you said, doing the research was realizing that there are a lot of people that want what I want in terms of a studio and a space to work out of. And they're addicted to this. I call it a sport sometimes. They're addicted to this craft, right? They love pottery and they can't stop. And I was the same. And I was in LA for about 2.5 months right before COVID hit. And there was a 24-hour access studio there that had all the glazes and everything you want. They just didn't give a shit, let you do whatever the hell you wanted. And it was the coolest thing ever, coming out of, a super restricting community studio in North Vancouver. And great place, but just not it's very limiting for actual growth. And then seeing that and being like, holy shit, this is amazing. But it's really expensive. And how are they doing this? They're making money, and I'm doing the calculations already. Oh shit, this guy is probably doing okay, not thinking about a lot of factors, but just realizing there's a business here, and this guy is crushing it. And he's got 3 locations and and seeing this model work, and then come on back up to Vancouver because COVID hit, and realizing there's nothing like that here. And that's how I knew we can do it. And that was that quote unquote research was realizing there's a lot of potential in this area, and you just you got to see it. The only way to see it is to be in it and to do it and to know what people want.
Well, there's so much in that story that you mentioned, because you mentioned coming in, being passionate and taking action. And an entrepreneur's job, I think, first is to be a problem solver. And it sounds like you were just a voracious problem solver as you went through this process of starting things up, right? Finding a way to get to the next problem, and then, all right, we can solve it this way. But you also kind of knew where you wanted to go because you were modeling the LA studio that you had seen, or you were taking some of the great things that you knew worked. So I love that strategy. I'm curious for, like, where does that problem, have you always been an entrepreneur? Is that something that you just kind of have done in the past and you problem solve? Because not everybody is like that. So I'm curious, like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I think I've, since day one, always been very, very, very entrepreneurial, but more, like you said, the problem solving aspect of things. First and foremost, it's an interest in something. I definitely have been, clinically diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, hyperactive, needing to like have something to do or I'm going to get destructive. And so I get hyper focused on something and, I can't stop. And if I love it, I love it. And that's usually where my, interests come from is that sort of just like, wow, this is cool. And I want to figure out everything about this. But usually what happens is I get myself in a pickle with something and it's like, okay, I bought this motorcycle for, $500. It doesn't run. I don't have any money. I got to figure out how to get this thing running and sell it or whatever. And like, okay, carbs, what are carburetors? Okay, I got to go figure that out. Da, 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 da. And so that's typically how I operate, is kind of out of necessity, either financial because I hoop myself or because like I just got to accomplish this goal that I've set out to do. And if I'm interested enough, nothing's going to stop me from getting it done. And yeah, that's always how I've been.
Well, that's what I was curious about too, because like there was a significant startup cost to doing something like this. It wasn't like you were starting an online pottery class where there's no startup cost. You're investing in a space and kilns and a lot. So there's a lot of capital investment. How much was it that you kind of started committing yourself and then having to create that like focus and passion on, all right, I got to figure out how to make this profitable? Or was there, I don't know, or was it more, intentional and reasoned and like careful along the way to get to that place where you say, okay, I'm opening my doors?
Well, like I said, once I committed to doing it, there was like, it didn't really matter what the cost was in terms of, startup. Like I factored all those things in, right? If it was not feasible, I wouldn't have done it. But I knew that, okay, here's a chunk of money that I'm going to need to get this thing off the road. This is how many, months, years, or whatever it's going to take me to break even or to at least stay afloat. And worst case scenario, okay, I can do this. And then, like financially, the last 5 years, I've done well with my acting. I've done well with my other gigs. I'm very, very smart with my money. I don't spend stupidly. I sell every car I buy for more money, every bike I buy for more. Like I'm always smart and sensible with my spending habits. And so that's allowed me to be very financially secure. And live a pretty fun life. And so I took the money that I had and I actually was wise enough to still take out a loan. And the, idea was that I have my own finances to cover that worst case scenario. Again, I'm not going to be on the hook for this loan. But I'm not going to be shit out of luck and not be able to pay rent, right now. So I still took out a loan. I did the calculations on interest and all this kind of stuff. And I went for it. And, doing, I'd say, like I did everything that I could myself. I did the renos, I built the tables, I had my electrician friend do the work and I was side by side with him, helping him out, doing this, doing that. So like I saved myself probably, I'd say like 80 to 100 grand by doing this stuff myself.
Right. Damn.
And so if I didn't have those skills, I don't think I could do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think I could financially justify it, from a like, oh, I have an idea perspective, and now, since last year we broke even and we're, now very profitable and we're doing good. But we're, had I had to pay for people to do all this work for me, like, I don't think I would have done it. So, there are barriers to doing a business and usually like if I'm going to approach something, it's because maybe I don't have the immediate knowledge, but I have the skill and the motivation to figure it out. And I'm going to do it myself and not necessarily have to rely on anybody else. And that's what this kind of business was to me,
Sounds like you bank on yourself confidently, which isn't really awesome.
You gotta.
Yeah, like not everybody necessarily would look at that and be like, oh, I can't do that, or there's no way I could be that person. Because there's probably lots of ceramicists out there that might even be maybe better than you were at ceramics before you opened this business, right? Like, but they weren't willing to go through all the things that you did to get to the point of like, all right, I'm gonna, like, entrepreneurship and the passion are two completely different skill sets. And it sounds like you got that entrepreneurship drive thing going for you, and the passion was really just like the big why behind it.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I do so many things in my life that kind of people say like, wow, you just went for it and you weren't afraid and you just did it. And a lot of times there are things that I actually don't care about. Like when I say don't care about, it's not that I don't care about my studio, don't care about my acting career. I care tremendously about these things that I've created and worked so hard for, but they're not things that I have felt like if I fail at this, I'm going to be embarrassed. Or if I don't do this, or if I put this out, people are going to mock me. It's my art. It's my thing. Like I have a hard time, believe it or not, putting my own ceramic work out there, because even though I know it's comparable to kind of what's out there, and I can make a variety of things at a decent level, blah 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 blah. I am more afraid of having my artwork that I have some sort of personal attachment to, because I felt like it was special to me, be judged. Whereas something like a pottery studio, I'm creating a space for other people to enjoy and be creative, and that is just a business. And same thing with acting. I am a vessel for other people's work. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm bad. That's on me to do the best that I can. But at the end of the day, like I'm there to service somebody else's creativity. And so that's why I do these things in that capacity, because I'm not afraid of the outcome. But there are a lot of things that I would like to do and wish that I had the balls to do that other people, would be like, it'd be easier just to put your shit on Etsy. Like that terrifies me.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Because it's this, like, kind of said, it's this feeling. And so I'll use my photography for example. I used to do a lot of photography, a lot of travel, and I've taken some beautiful photos, and I put them out there, and I have thousands of photos I never put out there, or I will hopefully one day. But anyway, the point is that you put out something that you feel like this is something that I resonate, I feel something about, and I hope other people enjoy it and they like it, and then they don't, or you don't get the response or feedback to something that you do enjoy and love, but you get an element out of that for something else in your work that you didn't really find as appealing in your own personal craft or art. And then you start to skew how you think you should present or do something based on, what you think other people might like. And then you become conscious about your creations. And that's just an artist's, conundrum. It's a tale of time, right? And to learn to get over that. So when it comes to my ceramics and my pottery, I've also been in some scenarios in the studio in the past where I was kind of the whole issue with that studio was a lot of people's work was judged in a negative light, and that's what Mudlab stands against. We're here to create, and so I kind of got this feeling, oh, my stuff isn't good enough, or it's not like this person's, or I will never be able to be as good, da 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 da. And so you just kind of withdraw from putting your art out there. But I still have a love and a passion for the craft and the community, and I want to create something in that. And so that's why I opened the studio. Wasn't because I want to sell my art, I want to sell my work. It's because I love pottery and I want to be in this, and I want to create a space that's unique. And that didn't feel as personal to me because it's a brand, it's a business, it's something that's out there that people see Mudlab. They don't see Andres and his creativity, and they don't feel like it's not tangible, like they hold it in their hand and say, oh yeah, it doesn't feel quite right or whatever, right? So that's kind of what that's all about.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of, if you were to put your stuff out there to be judged, it veers a little too close to what else is happening in Vancouver. And is there a chance, or is there any fear that it might then be the first step in your studio becoming like other studios?
You mean in terms of like my pottery,
or just the sense that people start to then judge pottery at Mudlab, and then
I mean, I think I've done a good job of keeping myself like separate from the business.
Yeah,
I don't
looking
think
at the online presence. I would say I had a hard time finding a picture of you. I was like, where is this guy?
There's a couple in there for sure, but it's, it's only because it's relevant, right? Like it's, teaching a class, or it's like something specific for, it's I don't plaster myself on it. I'm not the brand,
Right.
And I never wanted to be. And I think that's, important to keep in mind too when you're doing these things that are for other people. Is that you're not the studio. You own and run and operate the studio, and yes, you impart everything that is, living and breathing in that studio, but you have to separate yourself from being the studio. And so no matter what I do, if I put my art out there, and I do put stuff out there, I do sell stuff, I do get commissions, I've got work in coffee shops, I've got, requests for restaurants, all that kind of stuff. It's not like I don't do anything. I just don't push it. I don't put it out there like, buy my stuff, look at my art, da, da, da. And I will one day. I've got a great collection of things that I'm now really super proud of. And I want to build a website, and I want to put that stuff out there. But that has always been a little bit tougher for me to take that leap. But I don't think that if I ever, did that, it would affect, even if I was dog shit or whatever, it wouldn't affect the studio.
It's surprising that you haven't started an Instagram account just for all your ceramics works yet.
Dude, if I started a Instagram page for all the shit I do, I already have like 7 Instagrams, so I'd have a lot more. But yeah, it's something that I wanted to do early on, and then opening the studio, it also just, it took me into a different direction in this this art, right, in this craft, because now I'm focusing on operating a business. I don't have time to sit down and throw 40 bowls or plates or whatever. I have to, register classes, and I have to do my accounting, and I've got this and I got that, and I got orders, I got to pick up clay, I've got to figure out this, I got to train teachers, I've got to membership, shelving, da 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 da. I don't have time.
It's really interesting that you didn't use your brand for this. Like, that you're not leveraging to create your brand in a way. I actually think there's, on one hand, you can't take the brand with you wherever you go, but on the hand that we're looking at, you are able to have more time to yourself. People aren't expecting you to show up to everything. You can hand more off to other people that you deem capable in certain situations. And no one's going to go in and say, hey, I want class with Andres. Like, I really want him because he's the celebrity of this studio. He's the guy who started it. And, we got lucky that you were our teacher when I went in with that group, and that we knew each other. But if somebody else had been there, that was our teacher, I wouldn't have known.
Well, that's absolutely. And that's the thing about Mudlab, is that everybody that is teaching at Mudlab is phenomenal at what they do. And not to put anybody down, but, pottery has traditionally been a craft that is hard to teach and hard to learn. And you doing it, you can maybe, attest, it may have been challenging and difficult, but you did it.
Yeah.
And you walked out of there with a bowl.
I was really proud of my bowl. It was good, man. I was stoked.
As you should be, man. As you should be. Absolutely. And that's, yeah, obviously there's different levels of teachers. Like, for example, people will come to the studio to take a class with Vin. They will come to the studio to take a class with me, or they'll repeat a class. But a lot of people who come, they just want to try pottery, and they heard this is a great place to do it. Our Google reviews are great, and they're honest. And so people come and they do that, and they have a good experience, and they learn something, no matter what, no matter who they have. But yeah, absolutely. People will take a workshop with us because of the teacher. So that's there too, but not on any kind of like celebrity status level, or he's the owner of the studio, here he comes. Nothing like that, Yeah. And sometimes, I walk in there and like, I'm not there as much as I was, in the beginning. I was teaching 3 classes a week plus the events, and Vin was doing the other classes, and I was, doing all the kilns with Vin or whatever, and the glazes. And so I was there every day, and so I was a big part of that. And I was much more like a presence in there for the first like year and a half. And I think that's also something to say, kind of to your point of me not having to be there now, is that you have to be there at the beginning. Like you have to set this up and understand the ins and outs of everything. When I walk in there and I introduce myself to a class, I try my best to go with the, first few classes that when we have a new session or whatever, just to get my face out and say, hey, and just so people know who I am. But also, it's like I come in there now and I don't know a lot of people, and I walk in there and I say, hey, how you doing? Like, are you here for a drop-in? And they're like, yeah, why? Like, oh, cool. No worries. Like, you know where to go. Okay. Have fun.
So Vancouver.
That sounds
Yeah, but
exactly
it's
like everyone in Vancouver.
it's, it is what it is. Like, people don't necessarily know who I am. That's fine. I don't need them to. But I also want to come in there and people to say, hey, Andres, how you doing? Da da da, or ask me a question. And people who know me, they do that, right? And it's a very social, fun place. But I kind of jokingly a lot of times I'm always a little coy and shy to say, oh, I'm the studio owner here. I usually introduce myself as the janitor, because honest to God, I've cleaned the toilets more than anybody else has, and I clean up after people, and I do this and I do that, and that's what you have to do to understand how your business works, how to improve it, how to make it run as efficiently as you can from a grounds up level, and then B, also how to be fair in training people and compensating people. Because if you don't have an understanding of how long it takes to do a task, or you don't understand what the levels are in terms of progression in a task, you have unreal expectations on people, and that's not a sustainable way to have a business that is very manually focused. Like, it's a business that you have to have people trained to do things with their hands physically, and if you don't understand what that takes, you're off the mark, and then you're gonna just end up having a lot of conflicts. So so first year and a half, 2 years was like a lot of just doing everything.
That's the entrepreneur journey, being responsible for everything. I wanted to ask about something else though, because what I noticed is you started with a passion towards pottery, but then when you get into this, your focus sounds to me like it became much more upon the customer experience and the brand that you were putting out that way. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that is for you and how that came, how much of it was chosen beforehand and how much of it emerged through the experience of actually training and doing it with people.
In terms of the brand and stuff like that, or
well, the
business?
Brand and the customer experience, because at least what stood out to me was you mentioned I went to other studios and things felt judgy, for example, right? And you're like, I want a place where that is not the case, where it's more welcoming, more everyone can do pottery. You leave with a great pot. Frank is proud of his stuff when he gets done, and
I was actually really proud. I just
are you using it,
dude? All the time. It's
right.
My favorite small chip bowls.
This is the customer experience, right? So how much of that did that emerge through you doing it, or how much of that was chosen before and is that's what we're gonna do,
Well, in terms of the heart of what the studio was always, I want people to always have that childlike wonder of what they're making, even if I've lost it, and we're all guilty of accidentally imposing our thoughts on people's creative processes, whatever it is, right? And you got to be very careful of that, because everybody has different sensitivities. And even if you mean well. So for me, it was that's always was forefront, is that I want people to come in here and I want them to feel free to make whatever the hell they want. And even if it doesn't match my aesthetic or my thought process on what is good pottery, functional pottery, I can still have my opinion. And believe me, I do. But that shouldn't affect how somebody feels about creating.
Right.
And that's important. Because nothing is for everybody, and everybody isn't for one thing. So you can't expect to fit everybody's palm in their hand. For example, here's a mug I'm holding, right? This works for me. This isn't going to work for somebody else. But the creator of this shouldn't feel bad that they made this. Oops. But that was the point. And so that was always number one. And then B, I wanted to create a cool space that looked good, felt good, and inspired people, but wasn't imposing. Sometimes you go in studios and things like that, and you feel the presence of the owner, or you feel the presence of the aesthetic of the studio, and it kind of makes you think, oh, this is sort of what I should be maybe gearing myself, instead of just being okay, shit, this is clay. What am I going to make? How do I do it? Oh, fuck, it's crazy, but I'm happy with it. I'm going to go with it. And so that was always going to be the fabric of the studio. But in terms of just, figuring out branding and aesthetics and stuff like that, those things, I had an idea, but they change, and your ideas and how you start, oftentimes where you end up is very different. But the core was there from the beginning.
That was a moment that I just remembered from when I was there that really captures what you just said. Was there was a plate being made and it was getting really thin, and this was on the wheel. and then it split and it ripped along the sides, and one half of the plate just drooped down and became flat, and the other half still stayed up, but the rest of it was connected except for where it ripped. And you were like, no, keep it. Like, don't trash it. Put that in the kiln. That is really,
it's art.
It is. And I was like, he's got a really good point. Like, that is sick. And so I have that now. I took it, and like it got fired, and I was just like, they didn't want it, so I was like, I'm gonna keep that if that's okay. Like, you mind? Like, and I put that on my coffee table. It's dope.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? And like that is oftentimes when you get into the depth of something creative or something just that you're building and working on, you lose that feeling of like, this is just cool. And I likely wouldn't keep that plate for myself, but I know the feeling that you have when you're like, yeah, this is cool. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I never want to take away from somebody and impart on somebody that this actually isn't cool. Unless they come to me and say, hey, do you think that this mug is too heavy? And I'll hold it and I'll say, you know what? It feels a bit heavy for this handle. Da, 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 da. And we teach that. We teach people to be aware of function and feeling, and we're not just like everything is great, it's art, but we never want somebody to not have this like just cool feeling about what they're creating. And I'm glad you said that, because when people make these like funky plates in our one-off classes, which happens, or bowls or whatever, it rips and they go, it ripped, I could touch one again. And like, hey man, look, like it's art now. Like it's beautiful. You made this. Like let's fire this shit and glaze it. And you're gonna love it. And we've had people like, say, nah, trash it. I don't want it. And da da da. And fine, I'm not gonna force you to keep your plate or whatever, your bowl or whatever. But that's a beautiful thing. And that to me was what I remember loving about pottery and ceramics. And I want to see that in the space. And that's what to me, like, if we lose that, if I start to realize that I'm coming in there and I'm imparting some sort of different energy in the studio, I got to step away. And that's a reality, because it can happen, right? And like I go in there now and I see people like making a mess and not cleaning the thing properly or putting the thing in the wrong place. I got to say something. Hey, this is not how we do this here. You can't put the clay in the, the glaze bucket. That's not how it works. And you got to try and approach things as like, nice as you can without stifling people. Those are important things. And I get a lot of shit for that, right? Like put the chairs the right way, or put this here or do that here. But those are just function. And that's what we set out. And those are rules. But outside of that, how you create, go for it, man. Have fun. Like just express yourself,
That sounds very cool.
Hey, YouTuber, have you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify yet? Leaving a review helps people find our show, and with more people listening, we can get bigger names on the show and ask them for their nerdpreneur wisdom. I want you to take a second and imagine a nerdpreneur that you admire and that you want to emulate their success. Well, imagine them on the show, and imagine us asking them for their insights, and you all the while listening and taking those insights to grow your own brand. Sounds pretty good. So go ahead and click on the links in the description to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And heck, while you're there, why not subscribe? That way you'll get notifications for all of our future episodes. Thanks in advance. Now back to the show.
Well, let's go into some random rolls.
We got 23.
23. That is, do you follow any sports and why?
Not religiously, and I never have. I played competitive tennis growing up. I played at university and coached for many years. We didn't have a TV growing up. We lost our TV when I was like 11, and so that just stopped me from engaging with anything like televised or anything like that. And I just never got the habit of watching sports, like watching playoff games and getting into things when there's a lot of hype. But I don't follow any sports now.
Unless you consider pottery a sport.
A sport. I tell people that. I say this is a tough sport.
I think you do mention that
too. It's I always say that. I say this is a tough sport on your body because you're hunched over and it's very physical. But yeah. Okay, here. Shit. Okay, we got 92.
All right, 92. If your life were a movie right now, what would the title be?
Jeez. The hecticness
Hecticness.
Yeah, I think maybe like not unknown, but kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Hectic might be a good hecticness. ... Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the fact that I don't have an answer says a lot about where my life is at. It's a very interesting time, just in terms of how much you want me to go into
That's
my answer.
fine.
You want me to just
Sure.
shoot shit out? Okay.
As long as you want.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes people are like rapid fire, and I'm like, I really feel like what I want to say here.
We have rapid fire after this, but these are a little bit longer if you want.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's it's an interesting time in my life because the business is doing really well. Where I'm thinking of expanding or opening up some sort of side business that's related but different. And my acting career is doing really well, and there's a lot like up in the air, but a lot that has grown and developed. And it's like, what's coming up next? I don't know. No one ever really does. But like in my field, in terms of acting and other stuff that I do, like you just never know what's going to happen. And the trajectory is that I'm going to hopefully just continue to do well and grow in that. And then I have this business, like, what do I want to do? I want to expand. Do I want to sell? Do I want to do this? And these are like serious questions because they affect how, not only I move, but how hundreds of people that I have now created this community with are affected. Right. And do we change things up, or do we go the same, and da, da, da. So like where I'm at in my life is very reflective on what I've built. Not so much about like, what do I just want to do? And that's something that I've never really had to consider in my life, is that when I make a decision, it affects a large amount of people, not in a serious way, but it affects the way that they operate or whatever. And so it's an interesting place.
Well,
yeah,
it's
for
not
sure.
just
So
about
it's
you
an interesting
anymore,
place.
right? You have a whole thing you've built with people, and you pay people, and you've got a community. I mean, like it's that responsibility you have, but also something that's you must feel a lot of pride around that too, or proud of the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, I am now. I'm really proud. But again, like I'm so lucky with the people that I have that have come into my life through this, but have committed and dedicated to the studio. Like I built this. There's no doubt about it. But we wouldn't be anything without the people that we have. And so I'm almost like proud that I didn't manage to fuck this up, like with people, because that I don't think it's talked enough about in terms of like business. And when you have an idea, like unless you're just doing something on your own, like you have to learn how to handle yourself around people and how to communicate your ideas and get things done in a way that is mutually beneficial and is, that's the toughest thing is for me is, and I say dealing with people, I don't mean that in a negative way, but having to interact with people on a daily basis in a business or a boss setting, like that's tough. Do that the right way. And the fact that I still have the same people that I started with, and that people haven't just up and quit. A few people have left, not everything's perfect. But the fact that the majority of folks are still here and they're happy says that I think that's what I'm most proud of, because, I know that I'm a fun, outgoing guy. Hey, Andres is a good, fun dude, but like, I'm not always the easiest person to deal with. There's no doubt about that. And when I have an idea or I want something done, like I'm going to get it done or want to get, and that can rub people the wrong way. And so that's what I think I'm most proud of, is that I've learned that has been the hardest lesson for me. And again, not perfect. It's been a long journey of discovery in that capacity. But when, people say, oh, you must be so proud you built this. Yeah, I'm proud of like the community, and I'm proud that, I've changed and I've grown and I've developed and matured a lot through this. That is what I am without a doubt the most proud of.
Nice. Well, we're going to transition into the rapid fire section.
Cool.
So good luck.
No long-winded answers. I'll try my best.
Godspeed. First one I want to fire off here is in 5 words or less. How would you define a nerd?
Super fixated on something.
Perfect.
Nice. DC or Marvel?
Neither.
That's an acceptable answer.
Favorite Spider-Man actor?
Could not name one.
What is
An
your
actor
what is
that
I see their faces, and that's bad. And I shouldn't be interrupting you, but I see their faces. And Tom Holland, is that a guy? I think that's
yeah, that's
it
the
is,
most
yeah.
recent
no.
one.
Tobey Maguire. There you go. Let's go.
All right.
See, another Toby fan. Thank you.
I was wondering.
The Kirsten Dunst scene, that lives in my mind.
The upside
forever.
down
There you
one?
go.
Of
Yeah,
course, the
that
upside
that was
down
him,
one.
right?
Yeah, it
Yep, you're
was.
right.
That was correct. He got the
There
right
you go.
answer on that one.
Always.
All right. What is the best munchie?
The first thing that came to my mind are oh shit, those not the cheesies, but the hard cheesies. What are those called?
Crispy
Cheez-Its?
You know what I'm talking about?
Che-
They're not Cheetos. They're Cheez-Its?
Yeah,
No.
Cheez-Its. The
Are they
squares?
Cheez-Its?
Are they the crackers?
No.
No.
They're the long. They're like cheesies, but they're long and hard.
There's a crispy
What's that?
Cheetos. Spicy?
No. What are they
Double
called?
baked.
Somebody out there is like yelling the damn thing right now. They're like the thing. They're like cheesies, but they're hard and kind of crunchy. Anyway, those things are lit. When I was a kid, that shit was like crack for me. So, yeah, those are dope.
It's not cheesies.
It's not cheesies.
Okay.
Give me
All
a
right.
sec here. Cheesies, crunchy things. We're doing this. I'm sorry.
Do it.
Yeah, cheesies. Cheesies. No, cheesies are soft, right?
No.
Yeah, they
I don't
are.
think so.
The Cheeto, there's Cheetos, and then there's also Cheesies. So
The
it
ones that
depends
come
on
in the
which
red
one.
and white bag?
Yeah, they're Hawkins cheesies.
Yeah.
Haha. So
Those are a little crunchier. They're not as soft as
Yeah.
Cheetos. Cheetos are soft.
there we
I
go.
had those
Mouth,
for the
the
first
cheeses.
time like last year.
Yeah.
They are
What do you
good.
think?
And I don't like
Yeah.
Cheetos.
Okay, there you go. As an adult, it's not as
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you just eat this shit all day. Anyway, there you go. All right, rapid fire.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
Sweet Child of the Mine, although I should never sing that in public.
How many cats is too many cats?
I'll say 1, but it's going to piss off a lot of people, so I'll say 3.
3. All right.
Wow, a man of the people.
We're okay pissing
And
off those
3
people.
cats. Man of the people and 3
Yeah,
cats.
three cats is a lot. Two you got friends, and 3 you're doing it for yourself. So anyway,
Which Harry Potter book or movie hit you the hardest?
never read a book. Couldn't remember the name of the movie.
You've never read a book. That's hard.
No, I've read a book. Never read a Harry Potter book. I could probably list the amount of books I've read on 2 hands. But, yeah, I've never read a Harry Potter.
That's how
book.
you have all this
No.
time to do all the things you say that you do. Is no books, no TV, no movies.
Kind of something
kind
like
of
that.
actor
I've gotten
are
a
you?
lot more into movies and TVs lately. TV shows just because I'm slower now. Like I don't always have to do something. I kind of want to sit back sometimes. So I've been watching a little more TV and movies and stuff like that. But I love reading. I never take the time to be inspired to read. Put it that way.
Fair enough.
Is there any subscription you can't live without?
No.
What is the last TV show you watched?
That I finished?
No. And if you didn't finish, please say why.
The last one that I watched like as of like a night ago was House of Cards. I just started that. But I don't really. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's a little long draw. I'm sure it's great, but I don't have the patience.
I got through season 1, and then I was like, cool, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm sure it's phenomenal. I personally I rewatched Breaking Bad not too long ago, and that was the last one. And I remember I stopped at season 4 because I was just binging so insanely, and I had to just stop. And I never went back to it, and I just went for it this time, and I've got the whole thing in like I don't even want to say how many days it was. It was not a lot of days. So that was epic as shit.
Yeah.
Man. That's
Not a lot of days,
gonna-
not a lot of sleep, and not a lot of showering.
Yeah.
Got it.
If you're gonna crack out on
something.
one thing, Breaking Bad's probably the best thing to crack out on. Honestly,
Yeah.
there's a lot of shows you
Chris.
can crack out on, and not be paid off at the end, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
With that one.
Rock solid
So,
show.
If
Well,
you could
on that-
spontaneously learn to play a musical instrument or learn a language, which one would you choose?
Wow. I'd say musical instrument.
Do you know what one you would want to play?
Piano comes to mind right away because I never played the piano. My dad was a guitarist and a bass player, and I can like strum a few chords and this and that, and that's something I can teach myself. Piano is just so foreign to me. We had a piano. My mom had my brother in piano lessons, but it was just not something that I was ever presented with. I played the drums, and so piano would be, I think, something that I would love to learn. Yeah,
Great.
One of my best friends is an exceptional jazz pianist, and he just inspires me every time he's on that thing. So I would love to learn the piano.
My last rapid fire for you is: do you collect anything that you're embarrassed about?
Man, Frank, you don't gotta look too far to find embarrassing things.
As an actor, what are you
I
saying?
I am just as a human being, like I am an exceptionally embarrassing guy. Like I think that's a good thing. You know, I'm very I can be very self-conscious about like what people think, and not so much like what they think of me, like what I look like, how I dress. That was something that I you know, as a kid or a teenager or whatever, like those were the things that you think about. Now as an adult, like my extreme insecurity is how people perceive my intentions. I said this the wrong way. Right. I didn't mean that. I rubbed this person the wrong. Like, those are the things that I stay up at night thinking about. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Like I didn't mean it. Like that they're gonna think that. But in terms of like my day to day person, like I don't give a shit, man. Like I am a dumbass goofball, and like I don't care what people think of me in that capacity. Yeah, it's hard to embarrass me in terms of like the things that people would think are embarrassing.
I feel like that's a trend with actors a lot of the time. I resonate with what you just said. It's, you know, there's things I stay up thinking about, you know, oh, how I said that. But it's also like, man, you know what? Like I've performed and done some dumb shit on stage in front of a bunch of people. This is nothing compared to that.
Yeah, for sure. But again, like, and that's goes back to kind of, you know, what's important, because that's me. I said that thing. That reflects on me. That thing that I did up on stage, maybe I wrote it, maybe I didn't, but it was like I had to do that for that moment, and maybe that lives on camera somewhere or whatever. Like, fair enough, but like you're gonna judge that thing. That's not a showing of my character. And if somebody judges your character based on something like that, that's the kind of person that there's nothing you can do about that, and whatever. That's probably the kind of person they're going to associate with anyway. But it's the things that you do and say that reflect on you as an individual, and rightfully so. People will judge your character or assume things about you based on the things that come out of your mouth, and those are the things that I just like get in my head.
Is there anything else you want, any advice or wisdom that you feel like, you know what, I didn't get a chance to say this, and I'd love to say it before we wrap up?
I think a lot of good things. You guys asked a lot of really great questions. Actually, I really enjoyed this conversation. You know, in terms of just like entrepreneurship and stuff like that, I think, you know, having been someone who has dibble dabbled in a handful of little things here, you know, and I'm really growing in that capacity. I don't know a lot, and I have a lot to learn. But I would just say to anybody that is wanting to start a business or wanting to turn whatever they're doing into, you know, make it somehow scalable or make money from it or whatever, just like have genuine curiosity and passion in the thing, you know? And that's not always necessary to start a business. I had a window washing and power washing company in college. Was I passionate about window washing? Actually, I nerded out on window washing. I'm not gonna lie. I got made fun of a lot because I would like practice window washing in my house. But just like find, you know, yourself interested in the thing that you are trying to monetize or pursue. And if you don't have that genuine interest in it, it's probably not going to be sustainable if you want something to be sustainable. And not every business has to be a long-term thing. You can start something and sell it or pass it on or move on to the next thing. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And things fail and things succeed, whatever. But if you want to really find something that you're going to have that, like, you never work a day in your life when you do something you love, which is bullshit. You work every day, but it doesn't feel like work. You better make sure that you're just interested in that thing, you know. And I think when people are like, find your passion, that's a bit of a word that has always kind of tripped me up, because it's like, you know, and that's what they used to always say in business school, find your passion. What's your passion? And I'm like, I don't know. But what I've always found worked is that I just find curiosity in something. And then that's going to do the problem solving, right? You encounter a problem. You're like, well, I want to figure this out because I'm interested, not because so much that like I have to because I'm doing a business. Like there's that side of it too. But if you don't have that curiosity or that interest in something, it's a lot harder to take the steps to push stuff forward and grow in anything you do. So that would be like the thing that, I've learned the most in terms of why I've had any success in something is because I just find an interest in it. I just nerd out
That's
on it,
great.
basically.
I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that question got
Right
out
on,
too.
guys.
Well, this has been great. Where can people, if they want to take a class or support you or find you or hire you as an actor, who knows, where can we find you?
Mudlab.ca is our website, Mudlab Pottery. That's our studio.
Hashtag get muddy.
And you can hit hashtag get muddy. There you go. Yeah. And I'm on Instagram, Andres X Joseph. You can check me out there. I've got some fun stuff going on there. But yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty much it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. And as always, everybody, keep it nerdy.
Thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you in advance. Until next time, keep it nerdy.